Welcome back to lesson 2.2, Understanding Energy Transfers. And in this lesson, you guys will be doing lesson part 1 through part 4. Those are going to be your must-dos for this assignment. So let's go ahead and hop on into the warm-up, activity number 1. So in activity number 1, you have a chemist created the following model to explain a phase change they observed at home. A chocolate bar was placed in a hot pan and the chocolate began to flow and took the shape of the pan. So in that activity, you're going to explain the changes you would make to the model in order to show correctly what changed the molecule's freedom of movement. Go ahead and pause the video now to respond to the warm-up question. Okay, so I'm going to jump into activity 2, experimenting with magnetic marbles. So first of all, our key concept is when energy is transferred to or from a substance, it can change the molecule's freedom of movement. So when that happens, we're going to investigate. When that happens, we know that molecules have either added energy to themselves or removed energy. So it goes somewhere, but it either comes in or goes out. So here's our investigation question for today. Why can transferring energy into or out of a substance change the molecule's freedom of movement? Now, before we start this concept, you need to make sure that you understand this, that energy is transferred to or from a substance. It can change the molecule's freedom of movement. We've talked about that with phase changes and how that freedom of movement changes its phase. So here's the 3 claims that we're going to use our investigation question to help us answer these claims. So transferring energy into or out of a substance changes its temperature, which changes the molecule's freedom of movement. It can change its kinetic energy, which changes the molecule's freedom of movement, or it can change the molecule's speed, which changes their freedom of movement. So focus on those 3 things. It either changes the temperature, the molecule's kinetic energy, or the molecule's speed, and that will change their freedom of movement. So we're going to look for evidence that supports or refutes these claims by using both the hands-on activity and a sim, and each claim relates to a variable in the sim. You may find evidence that supports more than one of these claims, but let's see what we find out. So first we're going to gather evidence about the claims by using a model in which magnetic marbles represent the molecules that we have in that in a phase change or in a material. Okay, so then we'll use the sim to further visualize these molecules. So remember, when you're doing an activity, please make sure you follow the safety guidelines, especially since you guys are going to be doing these on your own or as a group. But today you'll be doing it on your own. Those substances that you will need will always be on the counter by the sink or at the lab station area that I have pointed you or guided you to. So follow directions and remember not to taste things. Okay, you can't in this lesson, but don't sniff things like put it under your nose. You want to waft, so you pull the air towards your nose. Protect your eyes, protect your hands, keep your hands away from your face. Make sure you tell the teacher if you have allergies. Be calm and careful. Report any accidents, injuries, or spills to your teacher and avoid anything that can cause burns, and make sure you wash your hands after class. Now, with this activity today with the magnetic marbles, the guidelines are really going to be more like this. Container lids should remain closed when you're shaking the marbles. Do not open the container lids, keep them closed. Keep your tablets and computers and things that have magnets in them away for this activity. That's going to prevent them not only from being knocked onto the floor, but it prevents them from being damaged by these magnetic marbles. Getting magnets near certain things that have memory can erase those memory cards, so you don't want it near those. Don't put the marbles in or near your mouth. Ingesting marbles, I hope you guys know by now, is absolutely dangerous to your health. I'm not sure if any of you put Legos up your nose as a kid, but it's not a smart thing to do. So how could you add energy to these marbles? So let's look at that. What can you do? And can you explain how shaking them might actually change their energy? So we're going to go into this activity. First, place that container of marbles on the table. First thing you want to do is you want to just observe them. Okay, you just want to look at them, see what's going on, and remember that the marbles represent molecules. Then for part two, you're going to add a little bit of energy by shaking the closed container very gently. We're not going to shake it abruptly, just very gently. So you're demonstrating one of the phase changes by shaking it very gently. Consider the effect adding energy into the substances has on the molecules. So remember, shaking gently is going to be a solid, correct? Just very gently. Could end up becoming a liquid, but it's going to start as a solid. Then you're going to vary the amount of energy. So experiment by adding different amounts of energy to the container. Now remember, other people are working, so try not to be too energetic with this, but observe what happens to those marbles. Make sure that you answer the questions that are on your lesson, and make sure that there's question 4, 5, and 6 describing the energy transfer and how the speed changed and what your observations were and how did they support your claims. Pause the video here to make sure that you go ahead and do that before we move on to activity 3. So in activity 3, you're going to use the sim to observe an energy transfer. So now that we looked at it on a macro scale, we're going to look at it on a micro scale. So we're going to look at what happens to the molecules in the sim when the energy is added to or removed from the substance. When working with a sim, you'll need to pay close attention to the kinetic energy of the molecules, and you'll need to turn on view kinetic energy on your sim. Make sure you turn that view kinetic energy mode on in the upper right-hand corner. Now remember, your kinetic energy key that you guys have, I think it's up here at the top, but it has different colors. And this is the different shades that you have. The closer you get to the brighter yellow, the more kinetic energy you have. So remember that as you're going through this sim, you'll learn more about that kinetic energy by completing these sims. So make sure you're paying attention to that. You will also use the energy transfer in and out for this one, and observe how this affects the kinetic energy within the molecules. So you're going to jump back into your lesson and go to part 3, launch the sim and follow the directions. It's going to tell you exactly what to do. If you want to work with a partner on this one, you absolutely can. One of you can have this screen up and the other one can have the questions, or the sim up, not the questions, the sim up, so that you can see what to do as you do it. Now remember, there are questions. There are 3 questions. Yes, 3 questions on your activity for this. So please make sure you pause the video to do those. Okay, did your observations from the sim and the hands-on activities support or refute any of these claims about temperature, kinetic energy, and molecule speed, changing the freedom of their movement? Next, we're going to use one more resource. It's going to be a video to help us answer an investigation question. After watching the video, we're going to return back to these claims. So in activity 4, you're going to explain zooming in on a phase change. So I'm gonna explain how zooming in on a phase change can help you learn a little bit more. So if you remember to refer back to these claims as you watch the video. Remember, we're going on temperature, if it's gonna be changing the freedom of the movement, the kinetic energy, or the molecule's speed. You wanna either support or refute these claims. So right now, I'm gonna ask you to jump out of this video and jump into the video that I have posted for you on Canvas to play it so you have volume with it. So the name of that video is called Zooming In on Phase Changes, and I posted it on Canvas for you, so make sure that you hop in and watch that video. Hey, thanks for hopping out and watching that video. We're going to come right back into the lesson. So based on the sim and the hands-on activity and the video, which claims do you think are best supported now? So discuss that with your group members. Pause here to do that and decide which one you guys think is the best claim, or which ones are supported or not supported. Okay, so we're going to talk about one more word of vocabulary, and we're going to wrap up the rest of this lesson. Kinetic energy, the energy that an object has because it is moving. Okay, so kinetic energy is any energy an object has because it is in motion. So how can we tell how fast molecules are moving if we can't see them? Talk with your group members about how we can tell how fast they're going. Pause the video here to do that. I guess you guys probably got this, but temperature. Temperature is a measure of how hot or cold something is. The higher the temperature is, the more energy it has in it. So we're going to go back to a key concept. This is something that you should be understanding at this point. Temperature is a measure of the average kinetic energy of molecules of a substance. So why can transferring energy in or out of a substance change the molecule's freedom of movement? Well, that's a good question. I'm going to ask you guys to go ahead and jump into part 4 and click on card 2. You should be answering the questions about writing your claim now. There are 5 questions here that you should be answering, so go ahead and hop out and do that now. Pause the video here. So I want you to work together as a group to create a claim that answers the investigation question. Why can transferring energy into or out of substance change the molecule's freedom of movement? Pause the video here to discuss. All right, we're going to look at the last key concept. Transferring energy to a substance increases in the kinetic energy of that substance's molecules. Transferring energy from a substance decreases the kinetic energy of that substance's molecules. So if you transfer energy into the substance, you increase their kinetic energy and make them move more. If you transfer it out, you decrease the kinetic energy, so those substances molecules move less. So that's the end of the main part of the lesson here today. And this part 5 for lesson 2.2 is not actually is a should do. So if you would like to do that, you're just going to use the modeling tool to show boiling and freezing. Read and annotate the article, and you can hop in and do those questions in your Amplify. And that is the end of 2.2.